So open that page, I'll search for my fix, find what I need in the deep dark abyss.
Hello, and welcome to another AI Skeptics podcast. We got Tom Adams here. We're going to be talking about AI bubbles. Oh my God. It's like we chose this topic weeks ago. We're like, we got to talk about the AI bubble. But it seems like perfect timing because it's just like all in the news right now. It's happening. And there's so much to talk about, but like we've broken it down into like 3 topics. And each of us kind of loves our topic. So we're starting out with Jake on the hype. Jake,
Part
what do you
one,
say?
The hype. Well, first I'll just say the other 2 parts to like show where this is going. We're going to talk about the hype, then the risk that it's an actual bubble, and then the future, what would happen after a bubble might burst. For hype, I'll say that when we started talking about this episode a few weeks ago, we were reading fresh headlines out of Davos about the runaway enthusiasm at Davos for AI among the Davos attendees. And we were kind of like, well, that's the nail in the coffin right there.
Yeah, I mean, just to put some color on that, like Davos is just like the worst place ever. And like, I mean, I've never actually been there. But every time I haven't been there, I've been so grateful not to be there. And like, it was extra awful this year because like Trump was there torturing all the Europeans. But what was really happening, and we read this on many sources, was that there was like the Trump show from the outside perspective, but from the inside perspective, it was AI all the time, like 24 hours a day. And it just seems like, yeah, they've managed to make Davos even worse than usual. Like, it's amazing.
One thing that even the Wall Street Journal reported on was the sense that it was like now or never, or you better get in now or you'll be left behind. Like this feeling of it's a runaway train and you're going to either be left at the station or you're going to just kind of hop aboard, even though we're not sure where it's going or if it's going someplace good. And that kind of...
And just to be clear, what's the worst about Davos? Sorry, is just the insularity, it's like already a bubble. But it's like a famous, like, you know, talk about climate change while you're wasting an enormous amount of energy and resources getting to Davos. Like, talk about poverty while you're hanging out with the richest people in the world. Talk about the inevitability of AI being the next big thing because people like you want it to be and will get rich, even richer, I should say, even richer when it becomes like that. It is just like the perfect bubble in itself. Sorry, just needed to clarify why I hate Davos so much.
Davos venting.
Yeah, I could go on, but I'll stop.
It got me on this tip of thinking about, it's like the overhang between the bluster and what's actually going on. And then there was an article recently in Brookings with a really blustery headline that was whoever controls artificial intelligence in 2030 or who's ever leading in 2030 will control the world until 2100. This kind of like very big claim. Then when you go into the article, it's kind of like actually saying nobody is going to control it. Well, here's what the article says. It says, to lead on artificial intelligence, you need 3 ingredients. You need to make a massive science investment. You need to have a nimble innovation cycle so businesses can adopt new technologies. And you need to have a tax and redistribution mechanism to deal with the incredible economic fallout of this technology. And the article further says there are sort of 3 big players that might be the leader. It's the US or Europe or China. And each of them has one of the 3 ingredients, but nobody has more than one. Now, and who has what? China has the big investment, ability to push big investment. The US has the nimble innovation ecosystem. and Europe has tax and redistribution, systems worked out.
I'm sorry to interrupt you constantly, Jake, but this just agitates me to no end. This kind of reminds me of when you hear the assholes in our field talk about like AI alignment, like the alignment problem, as if there's like one human that can represent all humans, one human perspective, and we're just like, can we just make sure that the computers are aligned with that one perspective? But in fact, the real story is like that humans don't agree with each other, and like there is no one perspective for computers to get along with, right? Well, similarly, like the US is going to win. Like if AI succeeds in the future, like to be a big deal, it's going to be like a company in the United States, not the United States. Like it's acting as if United States companies represent the US population at all, which, as we should have learned by now, they do not.
And beyond that, well, first of all, I agree. It's just like, who's going to be the winner? It's not a country, it's a company. I think I agree with that. I also just thought it was pretty amazing and there's actually a sentence in the article where it was like, the U.S. will win this. That's where the article ends up, saying the U.S. will be the winner of this race. It said, we just have to, we're going to actually say the thing from the article. The United States just has to quickly figure out ways to restore competition in tech, finance, health, and public education, so its redistribution systems are not strained.
That's all.
It's just that simple. So it's just like, it's a bubble when they're saying, in order to accommodate this bubble, the world has to change in a few fundamental ways, in a couple years. And
in its entirety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
it's like,
faith.
it's the ultimate K-shaped economy problem, right? Where you have like it's another way of saying is an increased inequality problem, where you have rich people getting richer, poor people getting worse off. And the rich people are the owners of the AI companies, or the investors in the AI companies. They're poised to get even richer. All of those problems that you just described are about inequality, really. You know what? I would love to solve those problems, irrespective of the future of AI.
Right.
You know what? Like, but I love the fact that you're just like, for the purposes of AI dominating every conversation in the future forevermore, let's just solve inequality. And it's like, sure, let's do that. You know what? Let's do it.
Yeah, since we're fixing things.
Not to preview my segment too much, but I feel like it would benefit from a definition of win. So there's a single dominant company that runs AI. So congratulations, you're the winner of a giant money-losing business.
Well, that's the transition right there.
The bigger it scales, the more it costs.
Oh, no, Tom, let's definitely transition to your topic, because we're not done complaining about Davos.
So, I mean, we talked about the financial risks as being a segment or a subject to talk about. And yesterday, Microsoft stock was down 10 or 11%, which is probably the most it's fallen in a decade, largely because it was revealed that OpenAI is responsible for 45% of its future cloud commitments of $625 billion. Well, one problem with that is that OpenAI doesn't have any money and loses money at an increasing rate. And the other problem with that is that Microsoft and other large hyperscalers or large companies are telling the world that they're making all this money that's tied to people that don't actually have the money to pay them in the future. And some of the ways OpenAI and other companies like them have been paying for things is through investments from bigger companies like NVIDIA and Google and Amazon and Microsoft.
So Tom, you sent us this image of a snake eating its own tail, which I think is
Yes.
like a perfect, like, a perfect
It's actually-
image for this
it's actually
conversation.
A basket of snakes eating their own tails.
It's a small basket though, right? I mean, the
Yes.
basket might be big, but there's only like 4 snakes in there, or maybe there's like a dozen, but like mostly it's
Yeah.
like NVIDIA and OpenAI and like
Oracle. Yeah.
and SoftBank, which is like SoftBank, like, isn't that the bank that like also lost billions of dollars on like WeWork
Yes,
to the same
WeWork.
place? It's like, it's another, Davos is like, everybody at Davos thinks something is true. Like, that's when you know it's not true. And like SoftBank putting a huge amount of money into something, that's when you're like, don't invest in that.
Well, yeah. I have not done a substantial analysis of SoftBank because they sort of defy conventional thinking. But yeah, I mean, Oracle and Microsoft and NVIDIA are all tied to smaller companies who buy stuff from them via loans or investments or non-cash commitments or whatever to those companies. Oracle's future depends on OpenAI building or committing to $300 billion in data center stuff. Well, again, where's that going to come from? They're not going to make it because they don't make any money. They lose money. So it comes from other people's money. And
I read
it's
that
very
they're
circular.
they're trying to go IPO.
Yes, they
this
announced
year.
today, I believe, that fourth quarter of 2026, they want to IPO, which brings me to the point I was going to make about WeWork. One way for OpenAI to outgrow, for now, the fact that they don't make any money or that they lose money is to IPO, and then they could raise fresh cash from a new source of funds instead of venture capital and large customers. They can get it from the general public. If there's even fresh cash to be raised in the IPO, because they may use all of the money, or they may use a lot of that money to repay the people that they've borrowed from already, because they have a huge amount of debt outstanding. So who knows if there will be a substantial amount of fresh cash. But if there is, then they can use that to fund some of their future growth. But even then, it's a lot of debt and a lot of future commitments, huge future commitments that they don't, have current money for. But so maybe that's a win. And maybe that's why they've committed to a fourth quarter IPO, is to get cash to pay for this future growth, because they've already tapped out all of the other sources of funds to grow with. But with WeWork as an example, and they're just a big embarrassing example that happens to involve some of the same investors. They announced in 2019 a big IPO, and then they had to put out documents that explain what their business was and how they make money, which was actually negative. And once investors started reading it, the banks trying to run the IPO got very negative feedback, and they pulled their IPO, and all of that led to their ridiculous spiral afterwards. So having to become more transparent is a big problem for companies that are kind of scammy.
Right. And like, yeah. So, I mean, the only reason that OpenAI would go IPO is because they desperately need to start paying back some of these loans, and they want that money while things are still hot, which they're not going to last. Right. But they definitely don't want to go IPO for exactly that reason, that they really don't want to describe how much money they've lost. Because, I mean, that's one of the things that I've known this before, but like really got to me this week when I was looking into this topic, is just like the poor metrics. And this is true for that piece that you mentioned too, Jake. The way that they measure themselves, whether it's Google's Gemini or OpenAI,
users,
the number of users, and like also
we have
how their newest models perform on intelligence tests.
Yeah.
It's
so
like,
scammy.
They think that they're so new. This technology is so exciting and new. It's like redefining what technology even looks like, that they don't have to ask, are we making or losing money?
Yeah.
It's like, guys, it's still a business. It still needs cash flow. Tom, what is the name of the guy who you sent us? By the way, you should probably not touch your desk so much because there's a lot of feedback when you
Me?
touch your desk. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. Sorry about that. What was the name of that guy who you mentioned, who blogs about this and talks about the snake that's eating its tail?
Yeah, Ed Zitron. He has a podcast and a website where he writes about this stuff in great detail, and he's pretty bearish on all of these companies.
Guy. We'll make sure that this link gets into the notes of this.
He's got dozens of articles on all of this, and he's suggested recently that he thinks that if the OpenAI or the AI bubble bursts, that it could actually be worse than the financial crisis. I haven't read that article, and I don't believe that to be true for a few reasons. But it could be like larger in dollar amount than the financial crisis. That I might believe. However, I would just, on what you were saying, want to throw in there, a lot of the numbers that get reported in all of this stuff are press releases. There's no particularly for a private company, there's no law that says they have to be, 100% accurate in the way they say these things. So they might talk, OpenAI, for instance, might say we have 200 million active users per month. What they might not mention in that is only 5% of them are actually paying for the service, or some percent. So here's one number that tells you something. Likewise, somebody is investing $20 million. Microsoft invested $13 billion in the ownership of OpenAI, but they've only funded, through the fall anyhow, $11 billion. And that happens a lot in these announcements. We have a $300 billion commitment. Well, yeah, but
right.
You don't have $300 billion. So
yeah, it seems like so many of them are future commitments.
Yeah, it's a commitment to pay it if we ever actually make any money in the future. I mean, it's a contract. You signed it and said you're going to pay it, but, assuming you have money, you'll pay it.
Tom, one reason why we're so excited to have you as a guest on the Bubble episode is because you have been intimately close to a different bubble during the financial crisis. And I'm wondering how much of the snake eating its tail phenomenon, how much does it remind you of what was going on? How is it same or different to what was going on in 2008?
It's similar. There were, not to get too sidetracked, but there was three layers of the financial crisis. There were mortgage loans being originated. There were mortgage securitizers putting them into securities. And then there were repackagers putting those securities into new securities called CDOs.
Right.
So the investment banks and other people started investing in the mortgage lenders, who were their customers. So the investment banks wanted to issue a whole bunch of bonds backed by loans from lenders. So they started buying up the lenders and increasing the volume of lending because now they owned them. They could open the taps. And then the investment banks started investing in the CDOs that they were helping to package from underlying mortgage securities, which they were now originating the loans for. And in particular, Citibank was a huge purchaser of CDOs that it created and other people created and stuffed them into various places like commercial paper and other things. And they were all nominally rated AAA, but they were all backed by, freshly originated junk. And so they had a huge concentration problem, several $100 billion worth of CDOs, which was the equivalent of like $1 trillion worth of mortgage loans, which was like the equivalent of 3 times the actual origination in any particular year because of credit default swaps.
If you don't mind me dumbing this down, it's less like a snake eating the tail of another snake, which is eating its tail. It's more like a snake master, like just giving itself a blowjob, because it's
yes.
These guys are just like, oh, let's keep it going on ourselves. It was just absolutely.
Yeah, maybe that's like if OpenAI said, we're going to be our biggest customer in 10 years.
Yeah, totally.
Like
we just made a contract with ourselves. And guess what? We are amazing.
Yeah, well, it's sort of a question of perspective. That's why people were upset at Microsoft yesterday, because Microsoft was basically saying, we're, our own customer for 45% of our future business.
Right.
And it's so bogus. And by the way, like my topic,
the same is true for Oracle.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go.
Same is true for Oracle. Same is true for Oracle and NVIDIA. They fund the product that they then buy, that they then sell to themselves in another structure, and it becomes very circular, very hard to understand what's going on. And that opacity
I'm just going to go ahead and say circle jerk. I'm going to say it.
Yeah, is because it's hard to figure out. It lets it continue and get bigger.
And maybe, Kathy, to tee up your topic, like maybe that's the difference between a whole sector has to burst, or just is it possible for just one company to fail in a world where the snakes are all eating each other's tails? Or circle jerk, or
circle jerking. Well, here's the thing. Like because I also want to think about analogies with the financial crisis, which I also lived through. And by the way, I remember the moment when the folks at D.E. Shaw, like some managing director, explained to us how AAA ratings on mortgage-backed securities were awarded, and how that junk was somehow turned into AAA ratings. And I was just remember being like, that's stupid. Me in the front row raising my hand, being like, isn't that stupid? Anyway, so one of the things I was thinking about is like two scenarios. First scenario is that OpenAI fails. Second scenario is going to be that like AI as a whole fails. Like AI is like not all that, which I think is probably more likely. But like, let's start with just OpenAI fails, which I think is quite likely. Like it's getting to the point now where other AI just performs better and is easier to use and more available. And so like there's actually no reason to think OpenAI is going to win this against Claude and Gemini. There's just zero reasons.
And there's no moat. There's no like thing that makes them, invincible compared to others in any of these businesses. It's all moatless.
Right, exactly. It's all bravado. And I have to hand it to Sam Altman. That guy...
That's his business. That's what he's good at.
Carnival barker of world-class or like scope. I mean, he's like at the level of Elon Musk, to be honest, which is probably why they hate each other. They're both carnival barkers. Like they just are so good at getting attention and not really knowing what they're talking about and just making promises that they can't keep. And I can't think of anybody else like that. Can you? Anyway, I'm just thinking as an investor, like, how do you short OpenAI? How do you protect yourself from OpenAI failure? Because as you point out with all the snakes in a basket thing, like OpenAI fails, so does NVIDIA, so does Oracle. People who invest in Oracle and NVIDIA have also invested in Microsoft. Microsoft is one of the ones that's going down, but they've also invested in Google because they're tech lovers. And they've also invested in Tesla because they love carnival barkers. The point being that like what we saw in the world of finance after the financial crisis, or during the financial crisis really, was that there was just so much correlated investment that it's really, really difficult to protect yourself against a certain type of bet. And it wasn't just because, it's seriously clear that, the NASDAQ is going to take a huge hit if OpenAI fails, but not because of just OpenAI, because of the like knock-on effects of OpenAI and its effect on those other huge companies. But I would say it's going to be bigger than you think, right? Just OpenAI failing and imagine like the other huge large language model platforms doing fine. And it's just at some point it becomes clear that OpenAI isn't going to win, that they've just run out of money. They just don't have enough money and it fails. It's just going to be a huge effect that we're not ready for. That's scenario one. But the scenario two is when like AI fails as a concept. And I want to go back to Jake's story about, I forget, was it the Brookings Institute? Which institute was it?
Yeah, the who's going to be in charge till 2100. That was Brookings.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like, I have so much, I have like a internal conflict, which is, I think, what's that called when you just can't get something straight in your head. You have two different competing ideas.
Cognitive dissonance.
Thank you. I have cognitive dissonance, and it's around like the future of AI, because like at one level, I'm like, well, this is going to be replacing everybody who is a customer service representative at all, which is a lot of people in the Philippines, and I feel for them, right? This is going to change the job of a lot of people. It's going to make computer programming really boring instead of cool and interesting and little puzzles that you get to do all day. There's going to be a lot of jobs like it's already disrupting introductory jobs in law firms quite a lot. Like there's a lot of things that are changing, but it's not going to do more than that. It's just going to modify the workplace in a way that like email did, which was real, but it wasn't the end of work.
Or
right?
Excel. Yeah.
Or Excel. Like, it's a normal technology, which I know there's a whole other theme, which we maybe want to bring those folks onto the podcast to talk about AI as normal technology. And I think that's a really good way of saying it. But when I hear the Brookings Institute thing about like the future, the country that owns AI is the next superpower. It's like geopolitics level, revolution. And I just don't see it. I feel like the real thing the most likely thing that's going to happen, besides that OpenAI is going to run out of money, is that we're going to realize that it's just not that exciting. It is just simply a new technology that is going to change certain things in certain ways. And that's it. And it's just not about geopolitics. It's not the end of politics as we know it.
No,
and it's really expensive. It's really expensive. And that has to be resolved at some point as well.
There's something...
Most people are getting it free.
Something strange going on in all this conversation is it's Sam Altman, and it's all being had by the large language model makers and builders. And that's, I think, what's people are talking about when they're like, AI is the future. They're talking about large language models. But at the same time, Sam Altman is the number one person who's like, oh, don't worry, because this is going to solve climate change and drug discovery. It's like throw out these other things. But that may not be a large language model doing that. That may be some other direction of AI development. And so it's like a shell game. Like on the one hand, they're just puffing up the promises of like AI, just purely hand waving AI. Meanwhile, they're just tunneling deeper and deeper in large language models, which I think goes, Kathy, straight to the automation, job displacement. It's a regular automation technology, a very powerful one. But it's like, to me, those are two different paths, and it's not obvious that you're getting any closer to solving climate change or, beating disease by just like going further down the automation of existing jobs path. And I don't know why they think they can have it both ways.
I have a theory about it. I mean, this is, insulting to CEOs, and I'm a CEO, so I feel like that's okay. I'm the CEO of a very small company, but like the high level executives who are the ones who are going to Davos, right? They are like polling at like, oh, I totally use AI. It saves me hours every day of work. And my theory is that their lives are more mundane than they think they are. and they're like using AI to answer emails and to read summaries of emails because they think they're so important and their time is worth so much that like they shouldn't have to read a whole email and they shouldn't have to write a whole email. And they just feel so good about the time saved for them that they're like, this is an amazing technology. And they're not thinking beyond that. They're not thinking like, how is it going to actually change like the thousands of people that work for me? How is like, and whereas the thousands of people who work for them are like, my job didn't get easier. You know, my job is just, I have to do more of it because now I have this tool that I can do. I can be more productive. I can be faster at doing something. It becomes less fun to do it. But I have to do more of it. So they're not psyched at all. Right. So there's this like huge divide between the average worker and the average CEO, but the average CEO is what we're hearing from right now. They're the ones that are putting that are putting this faith, this kind of crazy amount of faith in the future of AI.
One thing on the tail eating and on the what if OpenAI goes bankrupt and things, I hear a lot of people saying if that happens, there'll be a bailout. And I think that kind of ties into this CEO thinking as well. But the financial crisis was different because it was a regulated industry tied to the financial stability and money centers of the United States, which, you know, OpenAI is not.
That's a really good point. And you said it at the beginning, Tom, like the fallout of the AI bubble breaking or bursting is not going to look like the financial crisis. It's not going to have people losing their homes, like middle-class people.
Right.
It's going to have rich people being disappointed that they're not quite as rich as they used to be.
Yeah. And there's like no mechanism the way there was for banks blowing up, Citibank and AIG, to give them money. Like, I suppose Trump could like, oh, now I'm going to buy 50% of OpenAI or something like that. But that would be a crazy bad investment. And actually Congress has to do that anyhow. So,
it is an interesting topic to ask. It's an interesting question to ask. Like, what would Trump do versus what would Mom Donna do?
Right.
You know, like I do think there'll be a different political response depending on who's in power to like the collapse of the AI bubble. And by the way, I do think it's going to happen before the end of Trump's term. So maybe we should focus
that's a big part of what they're. Yeah, I think that's what they're all counting on. That's why they're rushing to IPO and put out all these crazy Carnival Barker announcements. Is that
they're counting on what?
Trump being president, and you know they can get away with looser securities law regulations, for instance, and less disclosure and less fraud prosecutions, and all sorts of things. They could all get pardoned
at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they've already paid for those things. You know. Amazon has paid $75 million for that, preemptively purchasing whatever they need to purchase from the administration.
About the Millennium film, which is coming out like today or something.
Yeah.
You know, we try to end up on an upbeat topic. Jake, I'm looking at you.
Oh man, it's on me right now to salvage this. Yeah, what do I have for us on the upbeat?
Sorry.
Mom Donnie will be
here in Southern California, I'll tell you
that. Somebody like Zoran will be addressing this in 3 years or less, this issue.
Yeah.
And it will be very different than what's going on now. May not be 100% better, but it'll be very different. So that's something to look forward to.
We'll take
well,
that
I for one am looking forward to the end of this utter nonsense, even and in part because I don't think middle class people are going to lose their home over it.
No,
but it'll be nice to see this era of absolute bullshit end. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
See you next week, guys.